Tuesday, January 12th, and this is the Morning Breach with Scott Davis. We begin today with a look at the recent Parler shutdown and what it means to you as a business owner. Politics aside, the recent actions of multiple private technology providers to decide to no longer do business with a company should have you evaluating your technology stack as well. Now, for the vast majority of us, we will never be in the same boat as Parler found themselves in. But precedent now has been set, and now it should be included in your business continuity plans. It could be your social media business, marketing, presence, or it could be your platform as a whole. But Section 230 of the U.S. Code was developed to promote the continued development of the internet, actually protects providers and users from any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected. So Section 230 actually protects and allows any provider to take action to restrict access or access to posts. The slippery slope is the definition of what is considered to be in violation is ever-changing and is open-ended. So pending the audience, your content today may be appropriate, but tomorrow it might not. At the end of the day, the data center hosts like Amazon AWS, the App Store owners like Apple or Google, or even the company hosting your website are defined as private businesses. And depending on your contracted terms, they really can ask you to remove your data at any time. This is where it's important to understand that contract. Depending on what you're hosting online, you need to know and understand the terms of cancellation of service, both on your end and on the host. How long would you have to locate a new provider and move your data? If you have a 24-hour clause of if the host determines you have 24 hours to leave, in 24 hours the likelihood of finding a new provider, getting that data transferred over, can be unlikely. So inside your business continuity plan, you should add a section and include the contracted information with your web service providers and what the ramifications would be if a service went offline. Now, it also appears that right before the site was taken offline, roughly 70 terabytes of data, including messages, videos, group members, and administrative accounts, posts, and even deleted posts were leaked. That's right, deleted posts, which means Parler, once a post was deleted, actually was keeping that data. Now, this data might prove valuable to law enforcement, since many who participated in the recent protest at the U.S. Capitol building used the social platform. So only time will really tell what will become of Parler. Yesterday, the networking gear manufacturer Ubiquiti announced that it became aware of an unauthorized access to its systems hosted by a third-party cloud provider, which potentially included data such as your name, email address, home address or business address, phone numbers, and the one-way encrypted password to your account. Although the passwords are scrambled, it is recommended that you should update your passwords and enable two-factor authentication as soon as possible at this point. If you are utilizing Ubiquiti equipment, the advice is to follow those instructions at this point from the manufacturer, as there's not a lot of data yet available. So it's hard to truly understand that full scope of the breach. So if Ubiquiti is saying you should change your password, I'd use that as the strong recommendation and change those passwords. A third malware strain has been discovered in the SolarWinds supply chain attack, has been identified by CrowdStrike, and it sheds some light on how cyber criminals compromised the SolarWinds Orion app build process. Being named Sunspot, this finding adds to the previously discovered Sunburst and Teardrop malware strains. While Sunspot is the latest discovery, there is evidence that it was the first one used, actually going back to September of 2019 when cyber criminals first breached SolarWinds' internal network. Sunspot was placed on a build server, and its purpose was to simply watch the build server for build commands that assembled the Orion platform. Once a build command was detected, the malware would silently replace source code files inside the Orion app with files that loaded the Sunburst malware, resulting in Orion app versions that also installed the Sunburst malware. The Trojanized Orion clients eventually made their way to one of SolarWinds' official update servers, and then were installed globally. Sunburst would activate inside the internal networks of businesses and governments, and would collect data on its victims and send the information back to the cyber criminals via a DNS request. If the threat actors decided a victim was important enough to compromise, the more powerful Teardrop backdoor Trojan would have been deployed. Or it would have been instructed, or the Sunburst malware would have been instructed to delete itself from networks that were deemed insignificant or high risk. The automaker Ford has shut down a plant due to the global semiconductor shortage. The computer chip shortage has forced Ford to shut down its Louisville, Kentucky plant in a first for the industry due to the lack of chips, which is expected to spread to other plants and vehicle manufacturers in the coming months. Earlier last year, automakers cut back on chip orders as the pandemic slammed the brakes on auto sales. But car sales bounced back sooner than expected, which has left the industry struggling with demand of the chips. The ongoing demand for laptops has added to the issues, as electronic and computer industries have been snapping up these excess supplies left by the auto industry. New Zealand's central bank announced that one of its data systems was breached on Sunday. A third-party file sharing service used by the bank to share and store sensitive information was illegally accessed, but the care functions of the bank remained sound and operational. At this point, the system has been taken offline until an investigation can be completed. Be careful using internet-enabled male chastity devices. Yes, I said that right. Internet-enabled male chastity devices, as an attacker is exploiting the Cellmate Chastity Cage, demanding 0.02 bitcoins or roughly $270 US to unlock the device. Don't be too afraid, as it sounds like a screwdriver may unlock the device manually, but an interesting story is sure to come out of this one. The government of Australia's Northern Territory has said that its IT systems were shut down for 3 weeks following a cyber attack late in 2020. A cloud-based IT system was taken down by a ransomware attack, but the integrity of sensitive data was not compromised, according to the report. The United Nations revealed a potential breach that was discovered as the ethical hacking company Sakura Samurai was reviewing the UN network strength. In under 24 hours, vulnerabilities were discovered that could have exposed over 100,000 personal data records and the GIT credentials, or GIT credentials. This is why it's critical for your business to engage in regular reviews of your security with a third-party vendor. It's just, at this point, I've been saying it for months, it really just shouldn't be a question anymore. If it's not in your budget for 2021, you need to get a third-party security audit done. Intel has added ransomware detection capabilities at the silicon level in its 11th generation Intel Core vPro CPUs with support for the hardware shield and threat detection technology, or TDT features. Through a partnership with Boston-based CyberReason, these new features are expected the first half of 2021. Hardware shield is a technology that will lock down the UEFI BIOS, whereas TDT will utilize the CPU telemetry and ML heuristics to detect possibly malicious code. The idea behind the new features is to share some of its data with security software and allow it to spot malware that may be hiding in places where antivirus apps can't reach. As the Intel PMU sits beneath applications, the operating system, and virtualization layers on the system, it can deliver a more accurate representation of active threats system-wide. So if you're looking at replacing computers, you may want to wait until these new 11th generation Intel chips arrive. We also continue our series today on improving your organization's cybersecurity documentation. We have looked at vendor security questionnaires and the acceptable use policy. Today, we're going to start the process of data classification. A data classification policy is in place to detail why data classification should be done and to establish a framework for classifying data based on its sensitivity, value, and criticality to the organization. You want to break out roles and responsibilities, typically with a data owner, data custodians, and data users. The owner is typically the department head or business owner that is responsible for the security of that data, whereas data custodians are typically your IT department or IT vendor. Data users would then be all of the users that can access or see the data. So I would start with your network shared drives and identify an overall impact level and classification label. Typically, your impact level will be a high, moderate, or low, and the classification label should be something like restricted, confidential, or public. You create this so you can have more impact levels or classifications, but it has to make sense to you and your data custodians. Next, you want to build a guideline on what makes data fit into the impact and classification labels. Again, the goal is for the data owners to classify the data. So your guidelines here ensure that the data gets labeled correctly. The guidelines should also cover and ensure that data that contains authentication information, electronic protected health information or EPHI, payment card information or PCI, or other personally identifiable information or PII is labeled as restricted and high impact. You can find a sample data classification policy as well as other policies we've covered at themorningbreach.com under Resources, Template Downloads. This is a great policy to get started on today. As a champion of Data Privacy Day through the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we are trying to help you respect privacy by ensuring your cybersecurity policies are up to date and designed for the current state of the world. That's today's episode of The Morning Breach. If you've learned something new by watching this, please take a second and like and share the video. If you want to see more episodes of The Morning Breach or find useful resources in helping you secure your organization, please visit themorningbreach.com and follow along with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thanks for watching.